So Brandon Olander had a couple of other things that he wanted me to bring up. So let me jump to some of that.
Did he tell you about his basketball skills?
Well, he was one of the guys that said you need to have Scott talk about his skills.
Brandon thought he had game and brought it to me. He's a good ball handler, but yeah, he's short for that sport.
Um, he actually said that you always. I mean, we sort of dug in on judging last time, but what he wanted me to bring up was you always had great insight into judging, and specifically the aspects of judging that outsiders don't necessarily know about. Um, one of those things that he brought up was judge training. You know, like a lot of people don't know that judges go through that, both in WGI and DCI. Um, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you went through that through WGI, or they were just like, "Come on, Scott, we need you to be a judge." Um, can you talk about that aspect, and maybe if there are any other aspects about judging that the sort of outside world isn't as familiar with, but is important and goes on?
Sure, sure. What I love, and I don't judge DCI, so I don't know about the training that they have. I hear about it, but it's all I don't really experience that. But I know with WGI, with the indoor stuff, when I first started judging, there was no training. It was, hey Scott, you want to judge? Sure, let's go. What do I do? Okay, you listen to this group, talk into this recorder, and put down a number. Okay, someone gonna help me with this? And it was like literally just you figure it out on your own, pretty much. And I did have help, by the way, from some of the guys who have done it. Ward Durrett, who's from Colorado, he actually started indoor percussion. Ward started indoor percussion. And so he got me my first gig. Said, hey, I want you to do this thing with me and judge with me. And so he was my mentor for a little bit. So thank you, Ward. But what I love about WGI to this day, still we do this every January. We have the judges meetings, or before COVID we did at least, and we're doing a lot of stuff online still. But you learn how to judge, and what I mean by that is like my caption is the music caption, which means we sit downstairs, right? And so all the music guys get in the same room, and you divide up into rooms. The visual guys go over here, effect guys go here, music guys go here, and then somebody runs the room. And Mark Thurston usually runs our music room with us, the head of WGI, who's also taught Crossman for many years, great drum instructor, great drum lines,
Yep,
great
the
guy.
Thurston
The
lick.
lick, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And so what we would do, well, we're all sitting in the room, all the music guys. So you got, myself, Julie Davila, Prosperi, JJ, Marty Griffin, Giff Howarth. I know I'm going to forget a bunch of names. Ricky Rodriguez. I mean, there's a ton of us, right? All of us guys are in that room. And he'll put on random, we got a big screen TV. He'll put on random groups from whatever decade. It doesn't even matter. Boom. Okay, next group. Boom. And you just write down comments, and you kind of, sometimes you give them a number, sometimes you just give a range. And then afterwards, you go around the room. So what did you check out? What did you like? I like the way the snare line sound. I like this. And I learn from other people what they like. For like a keyboard guy, for like a Giff, right? Howard, who's a great marimba player. He goes, no, but did you check out the way they did this voicing on this thing? And I go, well, rewind that. So they rewind, and then I watched that, and I wasn't watching the bass line. I was watching the keyboards, going, oh my God, I missed that. And so you learn how to judge better. You learn how to judge everything, and everybody has different strengths. I'm a battery guy, obviously. I'm a snare guy more, but I'm a battery guy, right? So by just grasping a hold of everyone else's strengths, you learn how to judge better. And I think it's the healthiest thing on how to judge. That's why I love WGI so much. Why I keep doing it is I do think they have the best interest at heart from what the performers are doing on the floor, and we're pretty consistent with the judging because we all learn how to judge together. You literally sit in the same room and talk about stuff and go over stuff about what did you see here, what did you see here, why'd you do that, so you learn what other people are looking at. So when I'm judging now, I'm not just focused on the snare lick, for example, or I try not to be, I'm trying to look at the big picture and trying to get more input from other people's, from the training process that we go through. I know that was long-winded, but yeah, it's healthy.
I'm happy to be long-winded. I'm happy with long-winded things happening on this podcast.
And we're in the right place.
So let me ask you this along those lines. When you you talked before in the previous episode about having your records about judges, and I would say you get to learn, I'll call them tendencies. You'll get to learn, where their focuses tend to go. but then obviously this training is meant to make it a little bit more broad and consistent, person to person. But there's a balance there, right? Because I mean, I think that some people on the internet and in the comment sections would love judging to be 100% consistent night to night. But what you're talking about is, by nature, it's not going to be quote unquote consistent, because the judges have different lenses from each other. In terms of where we are today, are we in a good place with that balance? Or do you feel like, I mean, I look at numbers and I go, I mean, I can still remember in '94, we lost drums a handful of times, always to different groups, you know? And these days, if that were to happen with like your favorite line, people would lose their minds on the internet, you know? And people that weren't there, people that are just, you know, they just know that a certain group is supposed to be in a certain slot. And it's not just at the top. It's like, you know, in terms of, you know, Cadets versus Boston or something.
Dude,
like
talk
that.
about losing their minds. Finals night 2019. The comments on social media after that. Yeah.
So are we? But are we in a good place in terms of that balance of like where judges' focuses tend to lie versus a holistic sort of consistency as far as, you know, who's better than who else?
Yeah, I mean, I would hope so. You know, I mean, I'm probably not one to answer that question. A good example right now with WJ, for example, they're doing virtual, right? Virtual, and it's not really competitive. There is a competition class, but it's ratings. It's not numbers like we're used to. There's not going to be a champion for 2021, you know, indoor percussion, which is fine. I don't think there should be, because everything's virtual pretty much. But what's interesting, one of the calls that we just had with the judges the other night, groups record their show, right? One camera upstairs, boom, you record your show, you send it in. So I was asking, so does everybody do a new recording every week? Or can you get the best run and just send that same run in? Let's say you had a great run 2 weeks ago. Can you just send that same tape every week, you know, and just use the same, you know, the kids could be at home, they're done, you know, but you're still going to be competing for the next month because you have this one video. And my whole thing was, how cool would that be? Just to check out what would happen if we didn't know that, and it's a different judging slate every weekend, but it's the same show. I mean, exactly the same show with no changes. How the numbers would change. It'd be real interesting just to see how that would, you know, come out as far as the consistency, right? Because who knows? I don't know. It'd be real fascinating just to do a study on that.
So let me ask you about something else that I know a lot of the outside people don't know about with regards to judging: the world of critique. So it's an entire world unto itself, is it not?
Oh, I've heard stories. Oh, I can't wait to hear this one.
So number one, do you have any good stories from critique? But number two, something I've noticed about younger staff people is a lot of times, I learned this from Jamie Hawley, a lot of times you don't know how to use critique, or younger staff people don't really know how to use critique effectively. You have a very limited window of time with that person in front of you. Who knows when you're going to see them again? Can you speak to that? What is, in your estimation, a really great way to use critique? And then number two, do you have any great stories from critique?
I'm sure I got a lot of good stories from critiques. Yeah, I mean, the best way to use critiques is you want the judge to understand what you're doing. You know, sometimes the judges don't understand what you're doing. You know, and the example that I've used before, and this goes back decades, is I remember the first time we had a snare part that there was 3-on-2. We're playing 3-on-2, you know, and because that note didn't line up with the other note, and it was between two different sections, tenors, snares, whatever. The judge thought it was an error, you know, because the judges didn't know 3-on-2. And like I said, this is going back a long time, you know. So nowadays you got 4-on-5, you got 3-on-4, you got all these different multiple patterns that you can play. That the judges, some judges, I won't say all of them, but a few judges need to be educated on what it is. You know, what are you guys doing there? You know, so you tell them, they're going, oh, okay, now I get it. You know, so my whole philosophy with critiques is I want them to know what we're doing. I'll explain what we're doing, you know. It's their job, in my eyes, to know how hard it is, to know how difficult it is. I was one of the guys who voted for let's get rid of critiques. when they tried to get rid of him about 10, 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was. Because I figured if we trust the judges, why do we need to talk to them? I mean, Olympics, they don't have critiques when you do an Olympic number, or, you don't get to go talk to the judges afterwards. I mean, that's why you hire the judges to do their job. But I get it. It's a build-up caption and all that good stuff. Some stories, the only ones I could really think of, because I'm generally a nice guy when I go in for Blue Devils. I've been in a couple times where I blew up a little bit, but I do remember being on the judging side of things for WGI a couple times. And when you do these small circuit shows across the country, you're getting probably smaller groups. Maybe just the band directors, the only guy that's working the line. And I had this one guy come in who I don't think knew who I was, had any idea my history, my run with the Blue Devils and RCC and everything else. And I remember he sat down and he goes, "Can you please say one thing positive?" And I go, "Sure, what do you mean?" He goes, "Your whole tape was negative." And I go, "Well, I assume that's what you want so the kids can get better, I mean, what's positive, what's good. I would assume, especially this is a prelim show, right? It's between prelims and finals." I go, "So I wanted to tell you guys what I think you should be working on to get better in the future." And he goes, "What have you done in this activity?" And it was one of those moments where it's a classroom and everyone else just kind of went,
Yep. Record
and everybody
scratch.
just kind of stopped and looked over, and I just smiled and I go, "That doesn't matter." I go, "I'll try to be more positive tonight." I go, "What should I look for? What do you want me to look for to, help you guys out?" So I was trying to get the positive aspect of it. But it was one of those comical things where it wasn't me, it was the rest of the room that kind of went, "Ooh." When the guy said, "What have you done in this activity?" It was like, well, okay. But we didn't go there. To me, that was a funny one. The other one was, I'm going to throw him under the bus too, Mike McIntosh, when he was, and I don't remember what indoor group he was working with. This was years ago.
Was it Gateway?
No, I think it was like music. It was a Music City Mystique that he did for a year or two as a consultant or something.
Maybe, I don't know.
It was one of the bigger. Yeah.
I know he did big high school. He had some big high school stuff, but
This was definitely an independent world group, because I remember the staff came in and there was like 20 people, and they're all sitting around, and it's just me at a table and everybody, and Mike's in front of me, and Mike was talking because he probably said, "I know Scott, I'll talk to him." And so Mike's talking to me. He's going, "Man," he goes, what you're not getting is we're trying to explore the mezzo piano range. The entire show, we're trying to explore that mezzo piano range and the difficulty that it is to be able to keep that consistent." And he's sitting there talking, I'm listening, and everyone else is just like kind of staring at me. And I finally said, "Who are you talking to?" And he just started laughing. Like, "I'm not buying that." And he goes, "Okay, man, sorry." He goes, "Yeah, we're dirty." I go, "Yeah, you're dirty. Go clean it up." But he was going through this whole philosophy of what they were trying to do, which was basically BS to, just to talk to the judge. And I just finally said, "Stop, wait, what?" I cussed him a little bit. And the rest of the guys who were like looking at me like they were going to kill me or something, I was going, "Relax." We're all friends here. So that does happen. There's been a few of those.
That's great.
I find them entertaining. I think it's fun,
Yeah.
Hey, Mitch had one more question for you, and he wants to know, when explaining to non-drum corps people, or civilians as George puts it, they tend to look at you funny and say, quote, "You mean you were in a professional marching band and you paid to do it?" Unquote. It seems really difficult to capture what that extra thing is about the activity that makes it so special and keeps a lifelong interest in it. What do you think that extra thing is, and why we/you continue to chase it year after year?
It's the competitive stuff, I guess, the competitive side, where you can be the best in the world at something, and we can do this, pretty well. So this is what we're going to try to do the best in the world at. I'm not going to be the best in the world at playing basketball or golfing, but I could, hopefully stay up there with paradiddles. So that's kind of, the aspect of that. And I think for the members, when I explain to people, I basically say it's marching band on steroids. Pretty much is what drum corps is nowadays. It's just the best of the best from the marching band world that's putting together this amazing production on a football field, musical theater, if you want to call it that. But it's a whole 11-minute production of musical theater pretty much nowadays. And it's the members. It's all about, you get to entertain. People pay money to see you perform. How cool is that? You're entertaining people. And that's you get the joy out of the applause from the crowds that you're playing in front of. I think that's a rush. That's still a rush. It's still a rush for the staff, when the crowd likes you, whether you're in the lot, or whether you're at a rehearsal or whether you're at a show. It's still, it's all right. We're doing all right. It's just, yeah, it's, I guess it's the competitive part, right? I'm not sure. That's what it is for me. I'm a competitive guy.
But even as alumni, and I try to think about what keeps us coming back. I mean, we're old.
Well, I tend to think that number one, I don't get hung up on the drum corps marching band thing, like using one word or the other, specifically because of you, Scott. You're not going to remember this, but
That ended years ago, I think. But anyways, what did I do?
well, in '95, I was having a tough day. I was stressed out. Which I'm sure wasn't a surprise. And you just came up to me and said, you said, remember, the best thing that can happen right now is that we'll win this whole thing, and then you'll get to go home and tell everyone you were in the best marching band in the world. Who cares? So get over it. Basically, my favorite Scott story. But I think that the something that's a big factor in terms of how special all of this is to us is that the age we are. A lot of people like look back really fondly on coming of age, becoming adults, those years like 18 to 22. And we tend to really hold on to that because we're just getting some responsibility and some freedom, but we don't have, unlimited responsibility yet. And we're able to do these really extraordinary things, and we're young and we're feeling good. So I think that factors into it. And I think for us, for our community, drum corps is that thing, but it is amazing how people, like what it does for people, even after all these decades, now that we have decades of time to be able to go, wow, this really is still meaningful and impactful, to us.
Well, just from your website, your forum alone with the 85 tearing off that Band-Aid, apparently, it's like, oh my God. I was like, should I call these guys and say, are you okay? How many years ago was that? It's like, get over it. It's like, wow. So yeah, it gets in your blood, and I think it's because it's such a cool thing that we do and not too many people can do it. Not too many people have done it. Let's put it that way. It's a very unique thing that, drum corps has become and created from day one. So I think it's unique enough where you can talk about it. And when you see, when you see someone else that marched drum corps, it's like, oh my God, your family. We could talk about this, as opposed to a civilian who has nothing to, doesn't know about it. So it gets in your blood. It's, the work that you put into doing a small show. You think about, indoors 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever. Outside drum corps, you're looking at 10, 11 minutes. And how much time you put in. You spent how many hours rehearsing a 10-minute show? Dude, I just went and saw a concert for 3 hours. They were awesome. Every song was great. Like, yeah, you don't get it. You don't get it. No, we're detailed. Like, yeah, they were detailed. They were really good. It's like, okay, just stop the conversation. But yeah, we know what we do. It's pretty crazy. That's why you get along so much better with drum corps people, I think.
So your story about critique, about that the one staff member coming to you and basically asking you to say something positive, reminded me of something else that somebody wanted me to bring up. I lost who asked me, so I apologize. But you've been doing this for a while. You've taught many different generations, like generations in the word of like Gen X, millennials, like you've taught generations of kids. What are the differences, or what have you learned, or have you noticed any differences in having to handle kids from multiple generations, and then also shenanigans, dealing with the types of shenanigans that members get into outside of the drumming stuff? Does that change, or has that changed over the years, and how have you handled it?
Shenanigans have definitely changed. And I just say that because I don't see them anymore. So maybe that's just smart on my point. Or the fact that I got so much older that the members don't try anything anymore like they used to. One of the biggest ones that I remember was Josh Beals, who was a tenor drummer back in the 80s. And it was one of those days where the staff bus took off to go out to dinner before the show or something. And I was with a friend, local friend, so I went out to dinner with him, came back. My bus where I lived on it wasn't back yet. So I wanted to just lay down and just relax a little bit before we had to get ready for the show. So I found this like teacher's lounge in the school that we're staying at. So I'm laying down and I'm kind of sort of sleeping. And I remember feeling something, and I remember just kind of barely opening my eye, and there's Josh Beals standing above me with a flag, and he's like tickling my nose with the flag. And I've got a handful of shaving cream, of course, that they have deposited in my hand. And I remember opening my eyes, looking at him, looking at my hand, going, "You just messed up." And for the next 2 weeks, I would go up to him every day going, "Where's your suitcase?" And he would, and he'd run back into the gym. And we were on tour, right? So every time we went to a rehearsal, Josh would have a suitcase with him because he was afraid I was going to do something to him when he was on the football field to the suitcase. And I was just messing with his head, you know. And I ended up, I won't say what I did, but I did do something to his suitcase later on that season. But it was good because every place we went, he would not let a suitcase out of his sight. So when we went to lunch, we went to dinner, we went to the football field, he had a suitcase with him. He carried it with him everywhere because he was scared I was going to do something to it. But we used to do a lot of staff things, practical jokes, you know, that I won't go into too much, but it always keeps it fun. What was the other thing you asked before the shenanigans?
The sort of general personality differences generation to generation.
I think it's better now because I don't have to deal with that as much. You know, I mean, we have a great administrative team that travels with us all the time. They're much more involved in the outside of the rehearsals with the kids than we are. You know, sure, we still see them, we still talk to them all the time, but it's not like it used to. I mean, before we were kind of like, okay, you're in charge of the drum line as soon as you get on the bus till we get off DCI's finals night. You know, everything they do when they sleep, when they. But nowadays, it's we got other people that take care of that part of it. So I don't see that other stuff as much. You know, right now I just still get in front of the drum line when we're ready to play most of the time and listen to tapes. We still listen to tapes and do all that kind of stuff and meetings. But and it, God, and I could be wrong, but I honestly think maybe I'm just getting too old. The kids are better. Sorry, George. The kids are better nowadays.
You don't have to be sorry.
You know,
I agree.
they're smarter. They're more polite. They understand that this is a very special thing and they could be replaced in a heartbeat, you know, which wasn't the case, you know, years ago in the 80s and 90s. You were trying to get, you know, members there most of the time. You're trying to fill up the line. But now there's so many phenomenal players because of indoor. You know, I think indoor has a great influence over what DCI is because there's more drummers. There's more quality drummers now because they're doing it year round. So everybody's just gets along better because I think a lot of that because of the indoor thing, just because they know that if they do something stupid or screw up, they're going to be replaced easily. So I think the kids are better.
Talking about better kids, let's talk about that 2019 baseline. How good were those guys?
I said this in the lot. I don't remember if it was quarters, semis, or finals, but right before we ran the bass feature, I turned to the crowd. I go, "This is the best bass line I've ever seen." You know, and I don't say that very often. You know, when I praise something, I get emotional just thinking about that again. Wow. But it was off the charts. Those guys were amazing. I mean, I remember writing that bass feature. We kept changing it throughout the year, and I kept thinking, "Can you guys do this? Can you do this? How about this?" And the last part of this one bass feature they had was just, you know, split singles with just the right hand down the line as it traveled. And they kept saying, and I remember the section leader, Trevor, is going, "Oh, I don't know, I got to play like 4 counts, you know, just the right hand at that speed." I go, "Yep, yes, you do." And they didn't think they could do it. I do remember that. They were like questioning, "No, maybe we should do this. Can we do hand to hand?" I go, "No, no, 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 no. This is all about you're showing off how fast your right hands are and how clean we would have the splits." And they did. They ended up doing it. It was crazy. Yeah, it was
I
crazy.
just remember being there at that first show in Fresno, and you guys, you know, trying to search you guys down because you guys were like on a sidewalk facing traffic, way away from everybody. And
I remember that. I remember seeing you there. That's right.
Yeah.
You came up and said hi. Yeah.
And
Yep.
and I remember you were going down. It was one of the exercises. You were going down the line. It was section by section, and you get to the bases, and I'm just like floored, just how
Yep.
incredible
Yep.
that they were, you know.
That was the flam exercise.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, those guys, and they came up with that themselves. They have their own version of the flam exercise that they change every year until the bassists have this own version that they put together. But it was crazy. It was, and that's where you start to realize during the, pre-contests where you going through exercises and the bass lines come up with different stuff going, what was that? Play that again. Oh my God, you guys can do that? Okay, well, that's going in the show. Okay, well, this is going in the show. Okay, we got to find a spot for this. We found a spot for all their stuff because it was that good. One of the tapes that we got, actually, it was at a critique. I think I could say this. I'll say it.
If you want to protect the names, that's fine.
No, because the names is what matters. It was Jeff Prospery judged us at a show, who I respect tremendously as a judge. Whether we're up or down. I mean, I think he calls it like he sees it. And one of the critiques we're talking about, we were down to whoever before us, and he goes, "So let's talk about that bass line." And this is a Greek, and I go, "I know, right? It's crazy." And he goes, he goes, "If you can get this other stuff taken care of," he goes, "that could be the difference." And I go, that was like, I've never heard a judge say the bass line could make the difference. And I got to tell you, at finals night, the bass line made the difference. They did, not the fact that we won drums that night, but because we won drums that night, that spread between us and the second place Bluecoats drum corps opened up more. Because if we would have been underneath Santa Clara, for example, that night, that would have been tighter to Bluecoats. I think they would have won the show. But because we were above Santa Clara in drums, that spread between us to them opened up more. Blue Devils won the show by, what is it? I don't know.
Less than a 10.
Whatever they are now.
Yeah. Less than a 10.
Less than a 10.
I was going to say, I want to say it was probably the closest finish of a drum corps show. Maybe 08. I was going to say 08
was close.
Yeah.
08 was .025. We're never going to forget that one. But, and I said it at the Blue Devil banquet. I go, baseline, you made the difference. You're the reason that we're all getting these rings tonight, Of course, the visual scores were great and everything else was great and everything worked. But, as far as just that one little caption, that one number, the way that changed it, that helped, obviously, the totality of everything. So, that bass line was awesome. Absolutely.
Well, I was going to ask you a random thing from 19. I don't know if you're going to remember, but I had some students in that line, and Matthew Shippey was one of them. And he told me, because I came and saw you guys at finals, and he told me that you told him that he reminded you, something he was doing reminded you of me, which my immediate reaction was, how can Scott even remember that? Like, how could, I know Scott remembers me, but I don't know if he remembers what I would do or the way I was. Do you remember that at all, or why you would have said that?
I'm sure if he said it, I did say it. I don't remember what he was doing at that particular time that reminded me of you. I don't remember. He didn't. Did he say what it was?
No. But so then let me ask you this, because you've taught a lot.
Was his left hand really bad and it slurred and it?
Probably.
I'm joking.
And I was stirring. Yeah.
Yeah.
But have you ever had kids that reminded you of other kids from the past? Like, it's almost like a reincarnation kind of thing. Or is every kid different? And
I've never thought of that, honestly. And I don't remember thinking that. Let's put it that way. What's really weird is this past 2019, Cameron Halls was a snare drummer that came to us, his age out year. His father, Brad Halls, I taught. He marched in the Blue Devil snare line in the mid 80s.
85.
85?
Yes.
Yeah, Brad Halls. And I had no idea I did this until somebody was making a post when we finally set the line in 2019, and there's a picture of him or a video or whatever, and everyone's going, "Oh my God, Cameron's in the same spot in the snare line that Brad was, 3 from the right or whatever it was." Yeah, and then people go, "Oh yeah, well Scott did that on purpose." And I'm going, "What?" That was not my mindset at all. I had no idea. I don't remember where Brad stood, but it was like, oh my God, I can't, it was just interesting how people bring stuff up like that I don't even realize, but he reminded me of his dad. I'll tell you that, yeah, just because they look the same.
Since we're talking 85, let's go back to the future. 85, with the exception of a couple of camouflaged snares in 86. 85 was the last year for Ludwig drums. Flash forward now to the upcoming years. Blue Devils goes back to Ludwig percussion.
Correct.
How did that come to be? Because we'd all speculated, like when it was announced that System Blue drums were going to be going away, that who the Blue Devils are going to be using next. And I want to say, I never, honestly, for me, I never thought of Ludwig, and then all of a sudden we see, there we go, Ludwig. Like,
Well, it's a history lesson here, the story of the drums. When we were back with Dynasty throughout the 2000s, we had ideas on how to do the drums differently. They really didn't want to do it. So then we switched to Pearl, and we brought the ideas to Pearl. They didn't want to do it. And we were talking to Conn-Selmer, which was Ludwig, at the time when we were getting ready at the end of our Pearl contracts, just to get somebody out there to help us. We have this idea. I had this idea of lighter drums. I see these kids in gymnasiums and the indoor world and high schools and everybody else, and tempos are not getting slower. Everyone's sprinting now. They're running, and the drums haven't changed. They're still heavy. So kids are. I think it's bad on their bodies. So it's like, how can we make this activity healthier for everybody? Was the old concept. And the other companies, they didn't need to do it. They didn't want to change, and that's all good. And I remember sitting down with Dave Gibbs, the CEO, going, we got to do this ourselves. And he was the first guy that came to me about System Blue products. And Dave, this was years before the drums. He came and goes, okay, I want you to start making our drumsticks. I go, excuse me? He goes, I go, you want me to get some wood and whittle drumsticks? And he goes, yeah, that's what you do at the time I was with Vic Firth. He goes, that's what you're doing for Vic, right? And I go, well, no, I design them. They send me prototypes, and I say if I like them or not. We change this, and we come to something that we agree on. And they make I don't make sticks. They make the sticks. And his whole concept was that all the companies that were using the Blue Devil name, are making a lot of money, and they did. I mean, the numbers are staggering as far as what the companies make when drum corps get involved with them, because that's their main commercial. And so Dave's concept was, I want to be able to, the corps, we need to survive. We survive on bingo. People have this illusion that the Blue Devils are so wealthy all the time and they travel better than anybody else and they eat better. We survive on bingo. And it's not good. And there was a year, people don't know about this, the Blue Devil staff took a 50% pay cut one year because we thought we're going to not be able to fill the corps financially. So it's not what everybody thinks it is. We have a good front, and things are better now, thank God. But there was times, and so Dave's always trying to find different ways to keep the core alive and survive. So he came up with this, idea to make our own products, to be involved in making our own products, I should say, with the other companies. The original concept was System Blue, System Red, System Green for the other drum corps to be able to make money by doing kind of the same thing. That was the original concept. So it started many years ago with drumsticks was the first thing we did. And that's when we went to ProMark, because they said, yeah, we'll do it, because the other companies, they didn't need to do it, but ProMark said, hey, we'll do it. ProMark wasn't in a big part of the market at that time. So Blue Devil switched to them, and I switched to them a few years later to finish out my Vic Firth contract at the time. But then we got into the whole drum concept, and I've been trying to get drums to just be futuristic. I mean, how many years has it been where a drum's a drum, right? You put it on, you got these things on the bottom that make it rattle, so that's a snare drum. The tenors have been cut away now since the 70s. I mean, technology exists, right? But we still haven't advanced the marching percussion world. And let's face it, I mean, nowadays with drum corps, you have speakers on the front sidelines. Everything is mic except the acoustic drums. So we got to figure out a way to make that balance better, whether it's with shotgun mics or miking those drums or whatever, just to balance everything out. So I always try to think outside the box on that stuff. And so we came up with the System Blue drums that the System Blue company was formed. Was it 16? I think 2016 was the first year we used them, I'm guessing, when we first used the full line of drums. It was a growing process. It was a learning process. It was a whole different mechanism on how to tune them, how to project. And it was a learning process. So we get to 2019, where I thought we had a really good sound. In 2019, I thought we got really close to, okay, we're figuring out how to work these drums now. And pandemic hit, COVID hit. Bands weren't buying any equipment. Marching bands weren't buying drums. Nobody was buying drums. System Blue couldn't survive. System Blue was it was a for-profit company not associated with Blue Devils as much as everybody thinks, because we're still a nonprofit organization. So it was a whole separate company that they created for products. But what was cool about 2019, and I don't know if people know this, every instrument on the field except the speakers and the synthesizers were System Blue. Every brass instrument, every keyboard instrument, every battery instrument were System Blue products that we designed, which was, to me, that was just, and that short of a time was like, oh my God, we really did this. Well, unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, System Blue shut down. We're done. We can't afford to keep doing this. So what we did is we partnered up with Conn-Selmer. Conn-Selmer called us. Conn-Selmer is also the branch for Ludwig, and said, hey, let's come on board. We want to do this together. The System Blue line isn't dead. I mean, we've changed the name to Performance Line, and Ludwig is going to be selling that. And what I'm excited about is now I have these engineers with Ludwig, drum engineers. The stuff we were doing was trial and error pretty much with System Blue. It was trial and error. Let's try this. Okay, that didn't work. Well, how about if we do this? How about if we do this? I mean, I was making stuff on tour to put in the drums, around the drums, everything. We're just trying to figure out anything to make the drums different, sound better, project more, all the above. And never really had any engineers to talk to be honest. It was just us, right? So I'm really excited. I've had a couple meetings now with the Ludwig engineers. They're excited about the performance series, which are the same drums we played on in 2019. We're still going to play those drums. I mean, now Ludwig's going to have their Ludwig line, which they've always had, or recently they've had, I should say. And they're going to have what they're calling the Pro line and the Performance line, which is going to be what the System Blue drums were. But now we're updating everything and just trying to make them better. So the line's still there. It's still going to be that line. We're still working on the weight factor to try to, make it easier for everybody. But I'm real excited now that we have some engineers that are going to be helping us out with this stuff.
Is there any, can you say at all when the public is going to be seeing this stuff? Like you guys using this stuff for the first time?
Well, we're supposed to get a shipment of drums in May for the 2021 season, if you want to call it a season, because we're still doing some performance things and still going to do some camps and whatever. I don't know how much the public's going to see of that. I assume if we do performances, that I'm sure people will see them. So hopefully they'll be out this summer. Yeah. Whether they'll be available to the public, I don't know yet. I don't know. Well, who knows?
I can't wait for this unveiling. I'm curious, to see.
Well, I don't know if it's going to look that different than they looked before. To me, the biggest, we've already talked through the snare drum and what we can do to make that better. To me, the biggest thing is the tenors. Originally, it wasn't a wood shell. It was the carbon fiber on the top, which eliminated some of the weight, but it also made them not sound very tenory. Kind of a timbali sound more than anything else, at least my analogy. So we went to the wood shells, which made them a little bit heavier, because what was cool about the design for the tenors was talking with all the performers, my tenor guys, they wanted the drums as flat as possible out front so they could play more vocabulary. They didn't want them around their body as much, which eliminates the weight because the weight sits on your body more as opposed to way out in front of you. So that was the original concept. And then when we got the heavier drums with the wood shells, all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, these are really heavy now. I go, we can go back to the other format where you guys have the drums around your body. I go, no, we don't want to change our book, because then they couldn't play some of the stuff they were playing because it was easier to move around the drums. So we're still working on trying to get that weight factor down with the tenor voice a little bit. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm real excited to be working with some real engineers now. And it's been great conversation so far. So it's all been Zoom, of course. Nothing's been live yet, but they're working on it. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear the basses also, because I've always thought Ludwig had like some of the best sounding basses, real deep, the deep tones.
Mm-hmm.
You bass guys, I don't lie.
I also think that trying to sound better in the mix, both indoors and outdoors, I think is something that we should keep striving for, because at a certain point you kind of just get used to how it sounds. If the basses and the tenors don't speak as much, you're just kind of used to that. Or if just like the snares are just, they're cutting so much more than all the other instruments. We just sort of get used to that's the way, but it doesn't necessarily sound good.
Right. We just get used to it. I agree. Yeah, you get used to it. I agree.
So who cares how sure, I'm sure they'll look good, but I care more about how they're going to sound.
Yes.
I actually,
as do I.
actually, Scott, I owe you an apology. You're probably not going to remember this, but 2017 WGI, we're walking out of semifinals, and we're just walking out of the building. It just ended, and you caught up to me, and we were talking, and you were just like, so what did you think of just like the overall thing? And the whole time I complained about RCC, and how they sounded, right? Because I was just like, man, I was sitting in the upper deck, and every time they hit those drums, I heard two different noises. I heard like the impact of the drum, and then I heard like another noise, and they just sounded dirty, you know? And I was going on and on and on, and you were talking about like the tuning and stuff like that. I had totally forgotten that those were the System Blue drums that I was like railing on. So I apologize for that moment. But
no apology necessary. I didn't like the way RCC sounded that year either. I remember telling them, I'm going, who's tuning these things? What are you guys doing? You know, and it's a new product, any kind of new product. It takes a while to figure out, especially in our world, right? We're so friggin' detailed, you know, to how to tune this thing, and it's a process. Like I said, it took us 4 years to get ours to sound the way I like them, you know, the way people like them, I should say. So yeah, it's a process.